The smoke was still rising from what remained of the general store when Hannah Morrison stumbled into the dusty street of Brownsville, Texas. Her hands held out before her like broken wings, blistered skin, already beginning to weep. It was August 1882, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the small border town, making the air shimmer and dance above the dirt road. She could barely see through her tears, barely think through the pain that radiated from her palms up through her arms, but she kept moving because staying still meant collapsing, and collapsing meant giving up entirely. Nathan Fletcher had been watering his horse at the trough outside the saloon when he heard the explosion. He looked up just in time to see flames burst through the windows of Garrett's general store. And then he saw her, a young woman in a singed calico dress, emerging from the smoke like a ghost. He dropped the bucket and ran toward her, his boots kicking up dust as he closed the distance between them. When he reached her, she was swaying on her feet, her face streaked with soot, her eyes wild with shock and pain. "Miss, let me help you," he said, reaching out but stopping short when he saw her hands. The skin was angry red and white in places, already blistering badly. She looked at him with green eyes that seemed to plead for something he could not name, and then her knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the ground, careful not to touch her injured hands, and carried her toward the doctor's office at the end of the street. Dr. Pemberton was already coming out, his medical bag in hand, drawn by the commotion. "Bring her inside," he called, holding the door open. Nathan carried Hannah into the small examination room and laid her gently on the table. She was conscious but barely, her breathing shallow and rapid. "I need water and clean bandages," Pemberton said, already examining her hands. "These are second-degree burns, maybe worse in some spots." "What happened?" "I do not know," Nathan said. "I just saw her come out of Garrett's store. The whole place is going up." The doctor worked quickly, applying a salve to Hannah's burns that made her gasp and cry out. Nathan found himself moving closer, wanting to comfort her somehow, though they had never met. There was something about her face, even twisted in pain, that struck him deeply. She was young, probably around 22 or 23, with dark blonde hair that had come loose from its pins and now hung in smoky tangles around her shoulders. "Hold her wrists," Pemberton instructed. "Not her hands, but keep her arms steady. This is going to hurt." Nathan did as he was told, gripping her wrists gently but firmly as the doctor continued his work. Hannah looked up at him, and their eyes met. In that moment, something passed between them, something electric and undeniable. He saw pain in her eyes, yes, but also fear and something else, something that looked like desperation. "Stay with me," he said softly, though he did not know why those particular words came out. "You are going to be fine." She nodded slightly, her teeth clenched against the pain. The doctor finished applying the salve and began wrapping her hands in clean white bandages, working methodically from her fingers up to her wrists. When he was done, both hands looked like white mittens, useless and bulky. "She needs to rest," Pemberton said. "These burns need to be kept clean and dry. She will need the bandages changed daily for at least a week, maybe more, and she cannot use her hands at all during that time." "Where can she go?" Nathan asked. "Does she have family here?" The doctor looked at Hannah, who had closed her eyes. "Miss Morrison, do you have people in town?" She opened her eyes and shook her head slowly. "No one," she whispered, her voice hoarse from smoke. "I came here 3 months ago. I have been living in the room above the store, working for Mr. Garrett." "The store is gone," Pemberton said gently. "I am sorry." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks, leaving clean tracks through the soot. Nathan felt his chest tighten watching her cry. He made a decision without really thinking it through. "She can stay at my place," he said. "I have a small ranch about 2 miles outside town." My mother died last year and her room is still set up. She would be safe there." Both the doctor and Hannah looked at him in surprise. "That is very generous," Pemberton said carefully, "but perhaps not entirely proper." "I will sleep in the barn," Nathan said firmly. "But she needs somewhere to recover, and she clearly has nowhere else to go. I cannot just leave her in the street." Hannah was staring at him with an expression he could not read. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked. "You do not even know me." He looked at her, at those green eyes that seemed to see straight through him, and tried to find words for something he did not fully understand himself. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said finally, "and because no one should have to face something like this alone." The doctor sighed. "Well, she does need somewhere to stay, and the boarding house is full up this week with the railroad surveyors in town. If you are both agreeable, I suppose it is the best option available. But Miss Morrison, you understand you would be accepting this man's hospitality. If you feel uncomfortable at any point—" "I accept," Hannah said quickly. "Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, you are very kind." "Nathan," he said. "Just Nathan." "Hannah," she replied, managing a small smile despite everything. By the time they left the doctor's office, half the town had gathered to watch Garrett's general store burn. The bucket brigade had managed to keep the fire from spreading to the neighboring buildings, but the store itself was a total loss. Sheriff McKenna was there, directing the efforts, his face grim. When he saw Nathan helping Hannah toward his horse, he broke away from the crowd. "Miss Morrison," he said, tipping his hat, "I am glad to see you made it out. You know what happened? How did the fire start?" Hannah's face went pale and Nathan felt her lean more heavily against him. "I do not know exactly," she said. "I was in the storeroom in the back, taking inventory. I heard shouting from the front, and then there was a crash, like breaking glass. When I came out, the whole front of the store was already on fire. It spread so fast. Did you see anyone? Hear anything specific?" She hesitated, and Nathan noticed the way her jaw tightened. "There were 2 men," she said slowly. "I heard Mr. Garrett arguing with them earlier in the day. They wanted him to sell the store, but he refused. They said he would regret it." McKenna's expression darkened. "Did you recognize them? What did they look like?" "One was tall with a scar on his cheek. The other was shorter, stocky, with red hair. They both wore expensive suits, not like regular ranch hands." The sheriff nodded grimly. "That sounds like James Pike and his associate. They work for Silas Vaughn, the railroad investor who has been buying up property along the proposed line. This is the 3rd suspicious fire this month." He looked at Hannah with concern. "You may be in danger if they think you can identify them. Where are you staying?" "She is coming with me," Nathan said. "To my ranch. She will be safe there." McKenna looked relieved. "Good. That is probably the best place for her right now. I will send word if I need to ask any more questions. In the meantime, keep your eyes open, Fletcher. These men play rough." Nathan nodded and helped Hannah up onto his horse, a steady bay mare named Copper. He climbed up behind her, careful not to jostle her injured hands, and they rode slowly out of town. Hannah was silent for the first mile, her body rigid with pain and stress. Then, as they left Brownsville behind and headed into the open country, she seemed to relax slightly against him. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I have brought trouble to your doorstep." "You have not brought anything," Nathan replied. "Those men brought the trouble. You are just trying to survive. Mr. Garrett is dead, is he not?" Nathan had been hoping she had not realized that yet, but he could not lie to her. "Yes, I am sorry. The sheriff found his body in the back office." She made a small sound of grief and her shoulders shook. "He was a good man. He gave me a job when I had nothing. He did not deserve this." "No, he did not. But you made it out and you are going to recover. That is what matters now." They rode in silence for a while longer, the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The landscape around them was mostly flat, dotted with scrub brush and mesquite trees, but Nathan's ranch sat in a small valley where a creek provided water year-round. As they approached, Hannah could see the simple wooden house, the barn, and the corrals where several horses grazed peacefully. "It is not much," Nathan said, "but it is home." "It is beautiful," Hannah said, and she meant it. After the chaos and horror of the day, the quiet ranch looked like paradise. Nathan helped her down from the horse and led her into the house. It was clean and simply furnished, with a main room that served as both kitchen and sitting area, and 2 bedrooms off to the side. He showed her to the smaller bedroom, which had clearly belonged to a woman. There was a quilt on the bed, a dresser with a mirror, and curtains on the window. "This was my mother's room," he said. "She died of pneumonia last winter. I have not had the heart to change anything, but I think she would be glad to know it was being used to help someone." Hannah looked around the room with tears in her eyes again. "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me. Let me get you some water and something to eat. You must be exhausted." He left her alone to rest while he went to tend to Copper and then prepare a simple meal. By the time he brought a tray with bread, cold chicken, and water back to the bedroom, Hannah had managed to remove her shoes but was struggling with the buttons on her dress, her bandaged hands making the task impossible. "I am sorry," she said, frustrated and embarrassed. "I cannot manage the buttons." Nathan felt his face grow warm. "I can help if you are comfortable with that, or I can ride back to town and ask one of the ladies there to come out." Hannah shook her head. "It is late, and you have already done so much. If you could just help with the buttons, I can manage the rest." He moved behind her, his fingers working carefully at the small buttons that ran down the back of her dress. He tried to focus on the task and not on the fact that he was standing so close to her, close enough to smell the smoke in her hair and something else underneath, something floral and sweet. When he finished, he stepped back quickly. "There. I will leave you to change. Call if you need anything." "Thank you, Nathan." He closed the door behind him and leaned against it for a moment, his heart pounding. What was wrong with him? He had known this woman for all of a few hours, and yet he felt drawn to her in a way he had never experienced before. He told himself it was just the circumstances, the drama of the rescue, the natural human impulse to protect someone vulnerable. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. He ate his own dinner in the main room and then set up a bedroll in the barn as he had promised. But sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about Hannah, wondering if she was in pain, if she was frightened, if she was regretting accepting help from a stranger. He finally drifted off near midnight, only to wake at dawn to the sound of roosters crowing. When he went into the house to make breakfast, he found Hannah already up, sitting at the table in one of his mother's dresses. It was slightly too large for her, but she had managed to belt it at the waist. Her hair was brushed and braided, though he could not imagine how she had managed that with her bandaged hands. "Good morning," she said, and he was struck again by how pretty she was, even with the shadows of exhaustion under her eyes. "I hope you do not mind that I borrowed a dress." "Mine was ruined." "Of course not. That is what they are there for. How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected. The pain is bad, but your mother's bed is comfortable, and I felt safe here." He started making coffee and frying eggs, aware of her watching him. "I need to change your bandages after breakfast," he said. "The doctor said daily, and I do not want infection to set in." "You do not have to do that. I can ride back to town and have Dr. Pemberton do it. That is a 4-mile round trip, and you are in no condition to ride. Besides, I have bandaged plenty of injuries on horses and cattle over the years. I know how to keep a wound clean." She smiled at that. Are you comparing me to a horse? He felt his face flush. No, I just meant, I am not completely useless at this sort of thing. I know what you meant. I am teasing, and thank you for everything. They ate breakfast together, and Nathan found himself enjoying the simple domesticity of it. The way the morning sun came through the window and lit up her hair, the way she tried to hold her coffee cup between her bandaged hands and finally gave up and let him hold it for her while she sipped. After they finished eating, he brought out the medical supplies the doctor had sent with them and carefully unwrapped her hands. The burns looked worse in the morning light, angry and weeping in places. Hannah looked away, her face pale, while Nathan cleaned them gently with diluted carbolic acid and then applied fresh salve. His hands were steady as he worked, but inside he felt a rising anger at the men who had done this to her. Who started the fire? He asked quietly as he began wrapping fresh bandages. Do you know for certain it was those men you saw? Hannah was silent for a long moment. I think so, she said finally. When I came out of the storeroom, I saw someone running out the front door. Just a glimpse, but I am pretty sure it was the red-haired man, and I could smell kerosene. Mr. Garrett would never have kept that near the front of the store, not with all those dry goods around. Did you tell the sheriff this? I told him what I remembered. But I was so confused and in so much pain, I am not sure I explained it clearly. We should get word to him. If those men think you can identify them as arsonists and murderers, you are not safe. She looked at him with frightened eyes. I know. That is why I am glad I am here and not in town. But I cannot hide forever, Nathan. I need to work. I need to earn my keep somehow. You can stay here as long as you need to. There is always work on a ranch, and once your hands heal, if you want to help out, I certainly would not say no. But right now, you need to focus on getting better. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Nathan would rise early and tend to the animals, then come in to make breakfast and change Hannah's bandages. During the day, he would work around the ranch while she rested or sat in the shade, reading from his mother's small collection of books. In the evenings, they would eat dinner together and talk, learning about each other in small increments. He learned that she had come to Texas from Missouri after her parents died in a cholera outbreak. She had no siblings, no other family, and had taken the first job she could find that offered room and board. She loved reading and had once dreamed of becoming a teacher. She was 23 years old, practical and strong despite her current vulnerability. She learned that he was 25, had grown up on this ranch, and had planned to expand the operation but found himself alone after his mother's death. His father had died years earlier in a riding accident. He loved the land, loved working with horses, and had never given much thought to marriage because he had been too busy taking care of his mother and keeping the ranch running. As the days passed, Nathan found himself looking forward to their evenings together more and more. Hannah was smart and funny, with a quick wit that surprised him. She could talk about everything from cattle breeding to Shakespeare, and she listened to his stories about ranch life with genuine interest. He noticed the way she smiled when he came in from work, the way her eyes lit up when he brought her wildflowers he had picked while checking fence lines. For her part, Hannah was aware of her growing feelings for Nathan and tried to keep them in check. He had been nothing but a gentleman, kind and respectful, never taking advantage of the situation. But she found herself watching him when he worked, admiring the easy strength in his movements, the gentle way he handled the animals, the thoughtful expression on his face when he was reading in the evening. She was falling in love with him, and it terrified her because she had nothing to offer. She was dependent on his charity, injured and unemployed, possibly in danger. What kind of future could she possibly have with a man like him? A week after the fire, Sheriff McKenna rode out to the ranch. Nathan was repairing a section of fence when he saw the lawman approaching, and his first thought was worry for Hannah. He set down his tools and met McKenna halfway. "Sheriff, is there news?" "Some," McKenna said, dismounting. "Is Miss Morrison here? I need to speak with both of you." They went into the house, where Hannah was attempting to fold laundry with her still bandaged hands. She looked up nervously when the sheriff entered. "Miss Morrison," McKenna said, removing his hat. "How are your hands healing?" "Better each day, thank you." "Have you caught the men who started the fire?" "Not yet, but we are making progress. I have been investigating Silas Vaughn and his business dealings. Turns out he has been using intimidation and worse to force property owners to sell all along the proposed railroad line. I have statements from 3 other victims, and I have issued warrants for the arrest of James Pike and his associate, Connor Murphy, the red-haired man you described." "That is good news," Nathan said. "But are they still in the area? That is the problem. They have not been seen since the fire." "I think they have gone to ground somewhere, possibly at Vaughn's ranch north of here. I am putting together a posse to go after them, but I wanted to warn you both. If they think Miss Morrison can identify them, they might try to silence her before any trial." Hannah's face went pale, and Nathan instinctively moved closer to her. "She is safe here," he said. "I will make sure of it. I know you will do your best, Fletcher, but these are dangerous men. I am posting a deputy in the area to keep watch, and I suggest you keep your rifle handy. If you see anything suspicious, fire 3 shots in the air and we will come running." After the sheriff left, Hannah was quiet, her earlier good mood completely gone. Nathan finished changing her bandages, noting with satisfaction that they were healing well, and then started preparing dinner. He could feel her watching him from where she sat at the table. "Nathan," she said finally, "maybe I should go somewhere else. Maybe I should leave Brownsville entirely. I am putting you in danger just by being here." He stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. "You are not going anywhere. Do you hear me? You are safe here, and I am not going to let anything happen to you." "But why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why would you risk yourself for me? We barely know each other." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair, taking her bandaged hands gently in his. "Because I care about you, Hannah. I know it has only been a week, but I cannot imagine this house without you in it now. I cannot imagine my days without seeing your smile or hearing your laugh. I know I have no right to feel this way, and I know this is probably the worst possible time to say it, but I am falling in love with you." She stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. "You are falling in love with me?" "Yes, and if that makes me a fool, then I am a fool, but it is the truth." "Nathan Fletcher, you are the least foolish man I have ever met, and I am falling in love with you too. I have been fighting it because I felt it was impossible, that I had nothing to offer you, but I cannot fight it any more." He reached up and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "You do not need to offer me anything except yourself. That is more than enough." She leaned forward, and he met her halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "Now we keep you safe. And when this is all over, when those men are caught and you are healed, we figure out our future together." "Together," she repeated, as if testing the word. "I like the sound of that." That night Nathan slept in the barn again, but it felt different now. There was joy mixed in with the worry, hope alongside the fear. He lay awake for a long time, thinking about Hannah and the strange way life could turn on a moment. A week ago, he had been alone, going through the motions of running the ranch without much thought to the future. Now he had someone to protect, someone to love, and the future seemed full of possibilities. The next morning, he was feeding the horses when he heard Copper whinny nervously from the corral. He looked up, and saw two riders approaching from the direction of town. For a moment, his heart raced, but then he recognized the deputy's horse and relaxed slightly. Deputy Martinez was with another man Nathan did not recognize, someone older with a marshal's badge pinned to his vest. "Morning, Fletcher," Martinez called out. "This is Marshal Harding from San Antonio. He has come to help with the investigation." Nathan shook hands with the marshal, a lean man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Sheriff McKenna tells me you are harboring a witness to the Garrett murder and arson," Harding said. "We need to speak with her." "She is in the house. But I should warn you, she has been through a lot. Her hands are still healing from the burns." "We will be gentle," Harding assured him. "But we need her testimony if we are going to build a solid case against Vaughn and his men." They went inside, where Hannah was washing up after breakfast. She looked nervous when she saw the marshal, but she sat down at the table and answered all his questions clearly and calmly. She described everything she remembered about the day of the fire, the argument she had overheard, the faces of the two men, the moment when she saw the red-haired man running from the burning building. "You would be willing to testify to all of this in court?" Harding asked. "Yes," Hannah said firmly. "Mr. Garrett deserves justice, and those men need to be stopped before they hurt anyone else." "You are a brave young woman," the marshal said, "and your testimony may be exactly what we need. We are planning to move on Vaughn's ranch tomorrow morning. If Pike and Murphy are there, we will bring them in. In the meantime, I agree with the sheriff that you should stay here out of sight." After the lawman left, Hannah looked at Nathan with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "Do you think they will catch them? Marshal Harding has a good reputation. If anyone can bring those men in, he can." The rest of the day passed slowly, both of them on edge despite their attempts to maintain normalcy. Nathan taught Hannah how to play chess using one of his mother's old sets, moving the pieces for her when her bandaged hands could not manage. They laughed when she beat him soundly in the second game, and for a little while they forgot about the danger hanging over them. That evening, as the sun was setting, Nathan was closing up the barn when he heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast. He grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the barn door and moved toward the house, his heart pounding. But it was Deputy Martinez again, this time alone and looking agitated. "Fletcher, we have a problem," he called out. "Someone at Vaughn's ranch tipped them off. Pike and Murphy ran before we could get there. And there is worse news. One of Vaughn's ranch hands told us they heard the men talking about the Morrison woman, about making sure she never got a chance to testify." Nathan felt ice in his veins. "Where are they now?" "We do not know. They could be anywhere. The marshal has men searching, but it is a big territory. You need to be ready for anything." After Martinez left to rejoin the search, Nathan went inside and found Hannah in the kitchen, her face pale because she had heard every word through the open window. He set the rifle down on the table and pulled her into his arms, careful of her hands. "We are going to be all right," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I will not let them hurt you." "I am scared, Nathan. I know, so am I, but we will get through this together." They spent a tense evening trying to act normally, but every sound outside made them both jump. As darkness fell, Nathan checked all the windows and doors, making sure everything was locked tight. He loaded his rifle and his revolver and kept them both close. Hannah insisted on sitting up with him, refusing to hide in the bedroom. "If something is going to happen, I want to face it with you," she said. They sat together in the darkened main room, watching the windows, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. The hours crawled by. Midnight came and went. Nathan was starting to think that maybe the men had decided to run instead of attacking when he heard it. A soft sound like a footstep on the porch. He held up his hand for silence and moved toward the window, rifle ready. In the faint moonlight, he could see a shadow moving along the side of the house. Then another shadow appeared near the barn. His worst fears were confirmed. Pike and Murphy had come for Hannah. "Get down behind the table," he whispered urgently, "and stay there no matter what happens." "Nathan, please be careful." "I will." The front door exploded inward with a crash and a man burst through, the red-haired Murphy holding a gun. Nathan fired without hesitation, catching the man in the shoulder. Murphy went down hard, his gun clattering across the floor. But then the window shattered and Pike was climbing through, a wild look in his eyes. "You should have minded your own business," Pike snarled, raising his own weapon. Nathan swung the rifle toward him, but Pike was fast, getting a shot off first. The bullet grazed Nathan's side, spinning him around. He fired back, but his shot went wide. Pike was advancing, his gun trained on Nathan's chest, when Hannah suddenly appeared behind him. She had picked up Murphy's fallen gun with her bandaged hands and brought it down hard on the back of Pike's head. The man crumpled to the floor, unconscious. For a moment, there was absolute silence except for their ragged breathing. Then Nathan was moving toward Hannah, taking the gun from her shaking hands and pulling her close. "You saved my life," he said, his voice rough with emotion and pain. "You saved mine first," she replied, and then she saw the blood soaking through his shirt. "You are hurt. It is just a graze. We need to tie these men up before they wake up. Can you do it with your hands?" Together, working quickly despite their injuries, they managed to secure both men with rope from the barn. Murphy was groaning in pain from his shoulder wound, and Pike was still unconscious. By the time they finished, they could hear riders approaching. Nathan grabbed his rifle again, but this time it was Marshal Harding and his men, drawn by the sound of gunfire. The marshal surveyed the scene and let out a low whistle. "Well, I will be damned. You two caught them for us." "They caught themselves," Nathan said wearily. "We just defended ourselves." The marshal's men took Pike and Murphy into custody, promising to get Murphy medical attention before locking both men up. Harding himself stayed behind to take statements and to look at Nathan's wound. The bullet had indeed just grazed him, cutting a painful furrow along his ribs but not doing serious damage. "You both did well," Harding said as he finished bandaging Nathan's side. "These men will hang for murder and arson. Your testimony will seal their fate, Miss Morrison. You can stop being afraid now." After everyone left, taking the prisoners with them, Nathan and Hannah stood together in the doorway of the house, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The ordeal was over. They were safe, and they were together. "I never want to go through anything like that again," Hannah said, leaning against him. "Neither do I. But I am glad I was here for you. I am glad we were here for each other." She turned in his arms and looked up at him. "Nathan Fletcher, I think you just proposed without meaning to." He smiled. "Is that so? Well then, Hannah Morrison, I suppose I should make it official. Will you marry me? Will you stay here with me and help me turn this ranch into a real home?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, properly this time, without fear or danger hanging over them, just two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, and chosen to build a future together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity and healing. Hannah's hands improved dramatically, the bandages coming off to reveal pink new skin that was tender but functional. She threw herself into life on the ranch, learning to cook Nathan's favorite meals, helping with the lighter chores and planning for their future. Nathan, for his part, seemed to walk around with a permanent smile on his face. He was in love, truly and deeply, and it showed in everything he did. They were married in September, just 6 weeks after they first met, in a simple ceremony at the church in Brownsville. The whole town turned out for the wedding, eager to celebrate the couple who had become something of a local legend. Sheriff McKenna gave the bride away, and Dr. Pemberton declared it the best outcome he could have imagined from such a terrible beginning. The trial of Pike and Murphy took place in October. Hannah testified calmly and clearly, and the jury took less than an hour to return guilty verdicts on all charges. Silas Vaughn was also arrested on charges of conspiracy and racketeering. The railroad eventually came through Brownsville, but under new management with legitimate business practices. Life on the Fletcher ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Nathan expanded his horse breeding operation, with Hannah proving to have a natural talent for training the younger animals. She was patient and gentle, but firm when needed, and the horses responded to her beautifully. They became a true partnership, working side by side during the day and falling into each other's arms at night. Their first child, a son they named James after Nathan's father, was born in June of 1883. Hannah had a difficult labor, and Nathan paced the floor of their bedroom for 12 hours while Dr. Pemberton attended her. When he finally heard his son's first cry, he burst into the room to find Hannah exhausted but smiling, holding their baby boy. "We did it," she said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "We made a family." Nathan knelt by the bed and kissed her forehead, then gently touched his son's tiny hand. "You are amazing," he told her. "Absolutely amazing." James was followed by a daughter, Sarah, in 1885, and another son, Thomas, in 1888. The house that had once been so quiet and empty was now full of laughter and noise and love. Nathan built an addition to accommodate their growing family, and Hannah planted a garden that became the pride of the whole county. On summer evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch their children play in the yard while the sun set over the Texas landscape. Sometimes, Hannah would look at her hands, at the faint scars that remained from that terrible day in August, and remember how her life had changed in an instant. She would have traded those scars for nothing, because they had brought her to Nathan, to this life, to this love. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan would ask, taking her hand in his. "How lucky I am," she would reply. "How blessed." "I am the lucky one," he would insist, and they would argue playfully about it until one of the children interrupted them with some urgent childhood crisis that needed parental attention. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Nathan's horses became known throughout Texas for their quality and temperament, and buyers came from as far as Oklahoma and New Mexico to purchase his stock. Hannah expanded her interests beyond the ranch, becoming involved in efforts to start a proper school in Brownsville. Her childhood dream of teaching found expression in the classroom she helped establish, where she volunteered several days a week when she could spare the time from the ranch and her family. Their children grew strong and healthy, inheriting the best qualities of both parents. James became a skilled horseman like his father, serious and responsible even as a young boy. Sarah had her mother's quick mind and love of books, always with her nose in some volume or another. Thomas was the wild one, full of energy and mischief, keeping his parents on their toes but charming everyone with his infectious laugh. In 1895, on their 13th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Hannah with a gift. He had been working on it secretly for months, using his woodworking skills to craft something special. When he presented it to her, she opened the wrapping to find a beautiful wooden box, intricately carved with images of flames and flowers intertwined. "The flames represent where we started," he explained softly, "and the flowers represent what grew from those ashes. Everything beautiful in my life came from that terrible day when I first saw you." Hannah held the box and cried, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift and the depth of love it represented. Inside the box was a collection of small treasures, mementos from their years together. A dried wildflower from their first month on the ranch. A smooth stone from the creek where they had often walked together. A tiny wooden horse that Nathan had carved while waiting for James to be born. And a letter, written in Nathan's careful hand, expressing his love for her in words that made her heart swell. They made love that night with the same passion and tenderness they had always shared, grateful for each other, and for the life they had built together. Afterward, lying in Nathan's arms, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not been there that day?" she asked. "If someone else had found me, or if no one had?" "I try not to think about it," Nathan admitted, "because I cannot imagine my life without you now. You are part of me, Hannah. You always will be. And you are part of me. You saved me in more ways than you know. I was so lost before I came to Brownsville, so alone, and then the fire happened, and I thought my life was over. But it was really just beginning." "Our life was just beginning," he corrected gently. "We found each other, and everything else followed from that." She smiled and kissed him softly. "Our life," she agreed, "always and forever." The turn of the century brought changes to Brownsville and to Texas. The wild frontier days were fading into memory, replaced by increasing settlement and modernization. The railroad that had indirectly brought Nathan and Hannah together had transformed the region, connecting once isolated communities to the wider world. But some things remained constant. The Fletcher Ranch continued to thrive, now one of the most respected operations in the county. And the love between Nathan and Hannah only deepened with time. On a warm evening in May of 1902, the entire family gathered on the expanded porch to celebrate James's 19th birthday. He had recently announced his intention to marry a local girl, Alice Brennan, and the family was full of plans for the upcoming wedding. Sarah, now 17, was preparing to attend a teaching college in San Antonio, following in her mother's footsteps. Thomas, at 14, was already making plans to expand the ranch's operations even further, talking excitedly about new breeding techniques and business opportunities. As Hannah watched her family laugh and talk together, she felt Nathan's arm slip around her waist. They stood together, slightly apart from the others, enjoying the scene before them. "We did well," Nathan said quietly. "Look at them, strong, happy, full of dreams. We gave them a good life." "We gave them love," Hannah corrected. "Everything else followed from that." He turned to face her, and she saw in his eyes the same love she had seen 20 years earlier when he had knelt beside her chair and told her he was falling for her. It had never diminished, never faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, deeper, more essential. "I love you, Hannah Fletcher," he said, "more today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too, Nathan. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me." They kissed as the sun set behind them, surrounded by the sounds of their children's laughter and the peaceful evening songs of the Texas countryside. It was a perfect moment, the kind that might have seemed ordinary to someone else but felt like a miracle to them. Because they knew how easily it might never have happened. They knew how close they had come to missing each other entirely. The years continued to pass with the inevitable march of time. James married his Alice and eventually took over most of the daily operations of the ranch, though Nathan remained active and involved well into his 60s. Sarah became a teacher as planned, making her mother proud and eventually opening her own school. Thomas did expand the ranch, purchasing neighboring property and diversifying into cattle as well as horses. Nathan and Hannah became grandparents, and then great-grandparents, their love story becoming family legend. The children and grandchildren would beg to hear the story of how they met, of the fire and the rescue, of the danger and the triumph. Hannah would show them the faint scars on her hands, and Nathan would add details about the shootout that she always claimed he embellished. "It was just like he says," she would insist, laughing. "He was very brave. And you knocked Pike out with his own gun," Nathan would add. "Do not leave that part out." On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1932, the entire extended family gathered for a massive celebration. There were over 30 people present, 3 generations of Fletchers, all descended from that chance meeting on a terrible August day in 1882. The house and ranch that had once seemed too big for Nathan alone now overflowed with life and love. Someone asked Nathan to give a speech, and he stood somewhat reluctantly, looking around at all the faces watching him with affection and expectation. Then he looked at Hannah, seated beside him, her hair white now but her green eyes still as bright as ever. "50 years ago," he began, "I was a lonely man running this ranch by myself and thinking that was all life had to offer me. Then a terrible thing happened in town, and I found myself face to face with a young woman who needed help. I could have turned away. I could have let someone else deal with it, but something told me to step forward, to offer what I could, and that decision changed my life completely." He reached down and took Hannah's hand. "Hannah has been my partner, my best friend, my great love for half a century now. She has given me children and grandchildren, joy and purpose, and more happiness than I ever imagined possible. And it all started with one simple choice, to help someone in need. So my advice to all of you is this: never turn away when someone needs help. Never close your heart to possibility. Because you never know when one moment of kindness might change your life forever." There was not a dry eye in the house when he finished. Hannah stood and kissed him, and everyone applauded. It was a perfect celebration of a perfect love, the kind that people dream about but rarely find. Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1935, at the age of 78. He had been working with the horses that very afternoon, doing what he loved right up until the end. Hannah was beside him when he died, holding his hand and telling him how much she loved him. His last words to her were, "Thank you for the adventure." Hannah lived another 5 years, remaining active and involved with the ranch and her family until the very end. She passed away in 1940, surrounded by her children and grandchildren with a smile on her face. Her last words were, "Tell Nathan I am coming." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as big and blue as the one they had loved all their lives. Their graves were marked with simple headstones that read, Nathan Fletcher, 1857–1935. Beloved husband and father Hannah Morrison Fletcher, 1859–1940. Beloved wife and mother, but those who knew their story knew that the real monument to their love was not carved in stone. It was in the thriving ranch they had built together, in the family they had created, in the lives they had touched. It was in every act of kindness inspired by their example, every heart open to possibility because of their story. The ranch itself continued through the generations, passed down from James to his children, and then to his grandchildren. Each generation added their own chapter to the story, while honoring the legacy of Nathan and Hannah. And on summer evenings, when the family gathered on the porch as they had always done, someone would inevitably tell the story again, of the fire and the rescue, of the bandaged hands and the question, who started the fire? But the real question, the one that mattered, had been answered long ago. Who started the fire? Some criminals trying to intimidate a good man. But who started the love? Two people who chose to be brave, to be open, to take a chance on each other when it would have been so much easier and safer to walk away. And that love, that choice, had created something beautiful and lasting that would endure for generations to come. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the beginning, not the circumstances, not the pain or the fear or the danger. What mattered was the love they built together, stone by stone, day by day, for 50 years. What mattered was the family they created, the life they shared, the joy they found in each other's company. What mattered was that when Nathan saw a woman in need, he chose to help. And when Hannah accepted that help, she chose to trust. And those two choices, made in a moment of crisis, led to a lifetime of happiness. Their story became a treasured part of family history, told and retold, embellished and remembered. But the core of it never changed. Two people met under the worst possible circumstances and found in each other the best possible future. Love grew from ashes, beauty from tragedy, hope from despair. And that, more than anything else, was the legacy of Nathan and Hannah Fletcher. A legacy written not just in family trees and property deeds, but in the hearts of everyone who heard their story and believed, even for a moment, in the transforming power of love.